to read and such. Never really in the right state of mind. Hello and welcome. That was Circadian Cycle by Miles Large, and this is the Giant World of Baseball podcast, a podcast about international baseball and sometimes the San Francisco Giants. I'm your host, the Frilled Shark, or Jacob if you please, and thank you for tuning in to this first episode. In this episode, I join my friend and legendary international baseball coverage guy, Jeff Duda, to talk about the 2026 World Baseball Classic qualifiers. This was recorded a little while ago to be a joint show for both of our podcasts, but I was on vacation and had some stuff come up, so that's why my version of it has taken a bit long to upload. I apologize for the mic quality being a bit rough at times because I was away from my regular recording setup. Going forward, I'll try to have at least an episode or two of the podcast up per month, probably on Sundays. You can listen in on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, so leave a comment or a review, and without further ado, let's get into it.
All right. So I guess we're just going to kind of jump into it.
Sure.
So you want to go ahead and we're going to kind of let you take the lead on the topics, and then we can just go into each topic one by one.
Yeah. So it's pretty funny that we scheduled to record this today, and then finally the actual qualifiers for the 2026 WBC get announced.
Yeah. I know when I was like, oh, you know what? I got some free time on, I think it was Tuesday, and I was like, let me record a podcast. I was like, they probably won't announce the qualifiers, for a couple weeks or at least. And then it was hours later, Francis Romero announced the qualifiers. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I was kind of I was being a little indecisive as to whether I wanted to press and try to record something, because I was like, yeah, maybe they get Curacao in there or something, or maybe all the details aren't correct, so I don't want to have to re-record something or whatever. But it just turned out to be exactly as you had heard, across the board.
Yeah. I was it was kind of one of those things. I was like, Curacao, maybe they'll get invited, but I had a feeling they wouldn't be, just because everything I'd heard is that they wouldn't have any type of pre-qualifier, and they wouldn't be introducing new teams, and also I think just it would take a hit to one of their teams who's been a traditional team that can get out of the first round and has made the semifinals a couple times. So I thought that probably played a role, but it was just funny that it happened so quickly, and it was we hadn't got any information really on it from any reporter for months and months, and then all of a sudden, it comes out just that day.
Yeah, and all the information we had heard before that was not conflicting, but there was just a bunch of misinformation, I guess, or just people taking things out of context because they couldn't read Mandarin or whatever, where all the reports are coming out of Taiwan or whatever.
And also there was a bunch of semi articles which is just, it's going to be 12 teams, and it's going to enlist all the same teams from the past qualifiers, and I was just like, that's not accurate at all. You're just relisting all the teams from the last time and passing it off as if it's factual information.
Right. I thought it was funny that I just think it's so funny that they announced everything, basically everything regarding the actual tournament before they announced anything about the qualifiers.
Yeah. I know. One of Fernando Rayo, who does the Nicaraguan reporter. I think he's probably had throughout is the only reporter who really had any information regarding the tournament. And then he just he would send me direct message, be like, yeah, I'm hearing the same thing that you're hearing on all this. And I was like, okay, all right, I feel pretty confident that's how it's going to be.
Yeah,
but then it was just then we get the final information, and then I had a bunch of people sending me messages basically, or responding in tweets, they're total disgust that there's only 8 teams.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I get it. You know, this it's kind of a it's kind of an unfortunate situation because like I made like this is the I made a comment like this is the danger of a pro league running the qualifiers because their interest is not going to be the same interest as someone who, you know, is just an international body. It's like someone like I like when France got left out. That was to me that was just like when I first heard it, I was like, this can't be right.
Yeah, I
Like
mean, you're between a rock and a hard place with the MLB and the WBSC, because I trust neither of them to do what's smart and right any of the time, but I guess the WBSC is maybe marginally less evil.
yeah, it's like I you can understand teams like South Africa being in there because South Africa they're the top ranked team from Africa, and you know you're not gonna have like China go from in the tournament to just no path at all just because that's just not feasible. But it's just like you see a team like France is higher ranked than Spain. Okay, so it's not like they had a process that was like, oh, well, we're just going by rankings now. That's how we're basing everything off of. Which obviously, it's like you take one look at the rankings and you're like, well, that's obviously not true at all.
They did finish worse than both France and Germany at the most recent Euros, though. So I guess
Yeah, yeah.
very
Oh,
short-sighted goldfish memory
yeah.
by the MLB.
It's it's a very interesting thing. Also, just because like you look at Spain as compared to like France. Spain is relying more on like the diaspora
Hmm.
and they're relying more on like players who are developed in Venezuela and Dominican Republic and Cuba, whereas France, like their roster would have been like probably let's say there's 30 roster spots, probably 24 would have been players born and raised in France, and to me that's like a major missed opportunity because you're seeing a nation that's growing and growing and doing it by domestic players mostly.
Yeah,
It's not as if they're just like reaching into America and being like, okay, well, you know, your grandpa's from France, or you know, there, or you got naturalized or whatever, and you're gonna play for us. So that's not happening. It's domestic players. Like I'm trying to think of one player that like at this point isn't that hasn't lived in France for a good 5 to 10 years. I wouldn't represent them. Like I guess what Alan Hansen I think was supposed
I
to
I would uh
represent.
I would say both Trevor Plouffe and Spencer Bivens could fit that category. Although Spencer Bivens only would be eligible because he lived in France for a while, I think, playing
Okay.
playing baseball there.
I I would I know Trevor Plouffe I think would had some interest at some point, but I don't think they would have like reached out just because you know
Yeah,
he's been.
I think it's kind of like a missed opportunity, like you're saying from a marketing perspective, because even if you didn't have a guy like even if you had Trevor Plouffe like not even playing, like if he was just a coach, like he's attached to the biggest non-MLB baseball corporation in the world, basically. And I'm sure we could have gotten a really fun like talking baseball vlog series of him at the qualifiers or whatever, which would
Yeah.
have put a spotlight on that and worked to drum up hype for the actual thing. But I guess that wasn't in the cards.
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely. I just feel like you just look at like Vancouver. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. It's French, is not my first language, obviously, but we're talking the best French baseball pitching prospect they've had. Like especially for that age, like somebody who is like going to be the was going to be like the future kind of French baseball at like the top level. And Matthias Lacombe didn't pitch for the White Sox, had an injury, but that guy is somebody who could have appeared for them. They have a ton of really talented arms coming through the college system that are they're gonna start putting those guys in Division One. Uh, Mathis Moron at Arizona, the first French player ever to play Division One baseball at a power conference.
Hmm.
Like they're building something, and to just cut their legs out from underneath them like that, to me, just it doesn't make sense. And it's France. It's a major like international country as far as like you look at their success in basketball, soccer. You know, it's they are it's a big country, and it's a big international sports country. I feel like you're just missing a major opportunity, and it's like they're doing it with homegrown players too. So you have a chance to really grow interest in that country in huge numbers. And it just seems like it's a very short-sighted view. Like, oh hey, we're gonna have some other nations there who aren't on their level be there, but not them. And there's no real reasoning. And then they didn't really contact France throughout the process. Like it was just to me, it was just kind of a it was a little bit of a kind of a bungling act. I didn't feel like the communication was good, and it's just a missed opportunity. It would be like if they just decided, oh Brazil, where we don't want you there, where Brazil's massive country, and they've had interest in growing Brazil because it's a massive country, and it would just be like, well, we just don't really feel like you're a fit here. And I thought that was a mistake. Like New Zealand and Pakistan, they have a ways to go still before they're like going to be competitive in a qualifying environment. But they should have been there too. And then you have Argentina. Argentina was a couple plays away from playing for the World Baseball Classic qualifier final to try to get to the World Baseball Classic. And then they were told they were going to be in the next edition, and then they weren't.
Yeah. And what I find especially bizarre about France's non-inclusion is I'm pretty sure like the MLB like international business strategy people literally came out and said like, "Hey, our overseas focus markets are like, here in Asia, and then in Europe it's specifically the UK, France, and Germany." And they
Yeah.
plan to have those summer like exposition games or whatever, or like the 2 game set. They had planned to do one in France, and then they canceled it. I wonder if that had something to do with their non-inclusion. Maybe they're like, oh well, you clearly didn't want to work with us here, so we don't want to work with your federation
Yeah,
for our
that
thing.
would be that would be pretty bizarre to me if they're just like, you know what, you don't help us out, then we're just gonna stagnate your development. Um, it's yeah, it's. I mean, I struggled to find a legitimate reason for them not to be there because I mean, and the thing is, they played Germany in the bronze medal game of the Euro, so it was like, was it effectively an elimination game for the WBC without anyone knowing?
Maybe, yeah. And
And
baby, Germany, we clutched up this one time.
yeah, I think France led in the
They
ninth,
did.
didn't
They
they?
did. I think it was like Lou Helmig or Yannick. I think it was Yannick Walter who hit like a walk-off double or something in the ninth.
Oh,
I
okay,
could be
yeah. I
wrong.
remember. I think they were leading like 2-1 or something. I want to say it was like Ernesto Martinez Jr. I think might have gave him the lead, something like that. Um, but it was I mean I was like, man, France might do it, and then they ended up giving up the lead, and it was a tough blow too because I remember that tournament. Vancouver he was like dynamite in that tournament too.
Yeah.
It's just like I was expecting him to like. I was like, okay, now at the qualifiers, he's going to be a guy that, at what 16 at the time, I was like, he's going to be potentially their ace. And then it's just like, yeah, good talk. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. Granted, I think both of his appearances were against like it was like Croatia and like
Yeah, it was
not.
Croatia and Sweden, I
It was
think. Yeah, so
not
I mean,
not exactly like powerhouses, but like what he did was ridiculously impressive nonetheless.
yeah, I kind of wish they had pitched him against a Germany or pitched him against. I think they played the Netherlands. I think they might have played
Uh,
them in the first round.
Probably. I think. Yeah, probably.
It was they played. Then it was either because I think they played. I don't think they played Spain until the maybe the quarterfinals, but it was definitely. I was really impressed with them, and they like you could see they had a deep pitching staff even without Lacombe pitching for them, and it was pretty interesting to see that they go from that was one of their strongest performances, I think, in European Championship history. I think they had maybe one or two bronze medals before that. So there was a really strong showing, and I'm just like, it's a strong showing, something they can build off of, not like just drop them altogether.
Yeah. So, I mean,
And
hopefully they'll be here when they hold the next one in 2028, 2027.
it'd be spring 2028 when they would hold the next qualifiers. But it's just like I think there's a lot of people that have kind of this hope they're going to expand the qualifiers, and they're going to, introduce kind of a new system. But it's like I think if they when they had the official announcement, which I think if Francis Romero's getting the info right now, I think that means it's coming. Um, when they get the official announcement, if there's not like a substantial amount of like strong heat that they get back from federations and fans, I think there's going to be like, well, what incentive do we have? We basically just uh, push this uh, push this through and without really much pushback.
Yeah. And
Because
I mean, they even kind of were like trying to do something like that in 2020 before the pandemic, where they're like, hey, the qualifiers used to be this fun thing where there was like four pools in random places around the world, and now it's just all in Tucson. And they were like, well, that's it. No
yeah,
more fun locations, but thankfully, I guess they.
yeah. To me, it was like, and it like they've mentioned like there's money and ticket sales, and they haven't had the greatest attendance, but like they were okay with doing like the 16 teams back in 2012. Like they introduced 16 teams in qualifiers. So you're going to tell me the event grows in popularity and these teams are getting better, and you go from 16 to 8 in a 12-year span. Like like you would think if attendance and money was an issue, it would have been a much bigger issue back then.
Yeah.
Where it was like they had to know like when you have France and Spain and and then a lot of teams like Brazil, where baseball isn't huge, right? You're not going to get a strong contingent of fans there. Um, you would think at the early start of this that this would be something they would start small and then build up, not start big and build down. Like to me that's been hard to figure out, and a part of me wonders if like Bud Selig, because he was the one who pushed through the WBC to begin with. If like he had more input after stepping down as commissioner in the very early moments, and then kind of just stepped away permanently, and then it became a focus on kind of limiting the amount of teams that could be there.
Yeah, maybe they'll, I don't know, maybe some of the federations or someone will be able to get like an official reason out of the people who organize the WBC, but
I'm just gonna send a message to Jim Small.
that's honestly, you know what? Fair. Just send it, see what happens.
I'm just gonna be like roll down the list of why this is a monumental mistake. It's like I don't worry, small federations, I got your back.
There we go.
It's
Fighting in the trenches for the poor Pakistanis and
right,
Kiwis and Argentinians.
right. It's just like it's like if no one else got your back, I got your
Yeah,
back, and
if no one
it's
else
just
got
like
me, I know Jeff Duda got me.
right. It's definitely something. It's just like I can understand having a smaller qualifier. If you look at if there was another like path, like if they were in the Olympics, consistently, or they sent, um, if the Premier 12 was bigger and they sent major league players there, I can understand it. But this is literally the only tournament where major leaguers play, and it is the highest level, that they can play at. There's no other tournament that they can play in. Like this is it. So you're limiting opportunities. Like so it's like so if they reach Major League Baseball, then that's it. They can't represent their country anymore.
Yeah.
Like to me that's like that is a true cannot see the forest from the trees way of going about it.
Yeah, Max Kepler's been an impact player in the league for what, like 7 years now ish, and he's never ever gotten to play in the WBC with his country or,
The
attend the
only
qualifiers.
time he only time he did was 2012
Yeah,
and in Regensburg.
yeah,
Yeah, when against it was so funny because I rewatched highlights of the Regensburg qualifier like last night. And then I was like, yeah, that's right. Max Kepler was there.
yeah. Young, fresh-faced
And
Max Kepler and Mike Bolsenbrook still throwing the baseball
yeah,
back then.
yeah. And I think Ron Gardenhire's son was on that team. Um, but it was it's like I think it's the last time. I don't think he represented them in like a European Championship after that.
Hmm.
So I think that was the last time he represented. It's like you like baseball is like it's unlike like in hockey because they left the Olympics and it was a big kind of thing, and then they didn't players couldn't play in the Olympics, but they still had like the World Championship, which is minor tournament. They could still represent like during the playoffs for the NHL postseason. Like they still had opportunities to represent the country. In baseball, this is literally the only opportunity. So it's like what I don't understand is why they don't open it up to every country. Like obviously you're not going to have, like Denmark or Norway or whatever playing, like Colombia in a qualifier because I think we know how that would go. But it's like, why are they not having like different scales
Yeah,
of
yeah.
of qualifying tournaments where, you know, there's a lot of these seasons in Europe, like they have breaks in the season. They can schedule these tournaments in season with smaller Asian countries and European countries and teams from the Americas. You can schedule it during the summer, and you can have different phases before, and then you can make it all the way to the main qualifier. Like it's not even something where MLB has to foot the bill on. Really, they just have the WBC host smaller tournaments like they do all year long,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden a team can make the jump all the way to the main qualifiers, and you have you actually have people who will come to the games and get interested in the national team. Like I look at the Pan American Games with Brazil. That's a really small tournament. It's a small tournament, and it's not something that the casual baseball fan has any like awareness about. But there were Brazilians who would get on social media and talk about baseball who had never watched a baseball game in their life because they were rooting for Brazil in the Pan American Games. Like,
Because Brazilian sports fans are something else.
yeah, and so I'm like, why would you not want more of this? Like,
Exactly.
it's just it doesn't make sense to shrink the qualifiers because you could grow the event even into something much greater. And like I've never understood sports leagues and sports organizations in general that are like actively choosing not to seek out more fans.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I the MLB behaves in very strange ways. Um, and with that, why don't we just quickly kind of cover last WBC qualifier and then get into the one coming up here in a couple months now.
All right.
So last WBC qualifiers were held in 2022 before the 2023 WBC. I think it was like late summer, early fall. Um, One of the pools was in Regensburg, and one of them was in Panama. I think Panama City.
Yeah, it was in Panama City at the Rod Carew Stadium.
Right. And we had two pools of six teams. And from Pool A, Great Britain and the Czech Republic qualified for the main tournament. And in Pool B, Panama and Nicaragua qualified for the main tournament. I think Pool A was probably a bit more exciting. Like I remember Pool A a lot more in my head because Spain almost qualified and then they kind of ran out of gas. But there was like a lot of good close games, and also a lot of blowouts in that one. What do you remember about that first pool?
The first pool, I remember probably the first game. Like South Africa was really competitive with Spain, which I didn't see coming. Like it was definitely a lot closer than I thought. Um, because I thought like I saw South Africa as kind of being kind of like the biggest underdog, and I did not see them being as competitive, but that was a little surprising. And then I think I had much higher hopes for Germany in that qualifier.
Yeah, as a ever suffering Germany fan, I kind of just expected them to choke, which they did. To be fair, they didn't really have that many affiliated. I mean, they had some affiliated players, but they didn't really have any like super strong like
Oh,
players. I was like, okay, yeah, this guy's really gonna be a needle mover. Like they had Brendan Donovan, but then like Marcus Solbach, I think he had Tommy John, so he wasn't playing, and Niklas Rimmel was a reliever for the
I
Twins. And
from that tournament, I don't remember Nicholas Rimmel like at all for some
I
reason.
don't think he pitched at all. I think he was on the team and he didn't even come out of the bullpen. But he wasn't starting at the time because the Twins, in their infinite wisdom, never tried him as a starter and then cut him despite him never being bad.
Yeah, Tommy Sommer I think was like supposed to be like one of their top pitchers, and I was like, all right, this is not going to be a strength of their
Yeah, and
roster.
Norbel Marquez unironically starting against South Africa in 2024.
It's but I thought offensively I expected a little more, like Bruce Maxwell, Aaron Altair. I thought Bruce Maxwell he kind of struggled
Yeah,
in that
they
tournament.
didn't have bad ABs. I remember they took some good ABs and took some pitches and walked a good amount. They just didn't really hit the ball that much.
Yeah, it was and I thought I was like they may not qualify, but I kind of was like, you know what? I think like I thought they could beat the Czech Republic. I thought it would be Germany and Spain
Mhm.
for for at least one spot. And Great Britain was kind of a wild card because they had a lot of players I hadn't really seen too much of. Like I hadn't watched Harry Ford at all at that point, and you know I hadn't I hadn't watched really many of their players, so I was like, I don't know how Great Britain's gonna do. They're a wild card, but you never know. And they had made, I think the final of the previous qualifier when they were in, when it was in Brooklyn against Israel.
Mhm.
So I think they were going to be there, but I expected a lot more from Germany. Even though the pitching was going to be a question mark, I thought they would look better. But they started in that game against Czech Republic. They started quick. I think they're up like 3-0,
Yeah, something like that.
and then it was gone in like an inning, and I was like, okay, wow, all right, this
Yeah.
is how it's gonna go.
Is Tom
I didn't.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You can go. It's fine.
Okay, I was gonna ask what were your question? I was just gonna say I was just a little surprised that Czech Republic came back, especially after that first game where they gave up like 21 runs to Spain. I was like, what's happening here?
Yeah, yeah. Let's not forget that there was that friendly between the Czech Republic and Germany like this year, and Germany almost swept them. I think the only game they lost by like a run or two. So,
Yeah, yeah, they were. I think it was funny because I think Germany they played also in Prague Baseball Week, and I think Germany went winless. I think.
mhm.
But I do think Germany sent a little bit of a stronger team to the second into the friendly against Czechia. But I think you can just kind of see now with Germany, they don't really have to bring in like a lot of like German American players
Yeah.
anymore to kind of bolster the team. And it's really just like the only really German Americans they probably want to bring in are probably guys like Brendan Donovan, who are, established major leaguers at this
Yeah.
point. And it's not so much like they on the qualifying roster, they had kind of guys that were in independent leagues, or they were, high A, double A, and guys who hadn't really had like really strong careers in the minors. I think now they're kind of at a point where with their development that like they can use mostly players who have grown up in Germany and played in the Bundesliga.
Mm-hmm. Is Tommy Sommer Luke Sommer's brother?
Um, I do not know the answer to that. I read a kind of a little summarize of Tommy Sommer and before he played for Germany in the qualifiers. I think he was played at like Indiana.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I don't think it mentioned having a brother in it, but it could just be they're just like an Indiana reporter, so they just didn't think to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were just mostly asking about like his parents and grandparents, and so yeah. So I don't know the answer to that, but I I uh I didn't know he was like he was German. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he had a pretty decent college career, so I was expecting a little better performance, but
Yeah, his minor league career wasn't too bad, and he looks to actually be doing not too poorly in the American Association for Kane County right now. So who knows? Maybe he'll be there in
I
February,
mean
March again.
he is an American Association champion, so
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I was pretty, I was rooting for South Africa. They kept it close against Spain, but it was an interesting qualifier, and I think it kind of like reinforced to me the fact that like, these federations have certain perceptions of the quality of play and player in their own leagues, like their domestic leagues, but like if you bring like 20 affiliated baseball players, you're probably gonna beat them. That's what I learned from Great Britain. Um,
yeah.
so
It,
we'll see how that kind of translates to this next WBC qualifier. Um,
I'm gonna pull up the rosters in just a second. I remember most of the rosters, but I don't. There's always a few guys that I miss on. Like it's like who's like they're gonna have some guys back. I think you're gonna get like the Aaron Altairs back. I
we're gonna
imagine,
run 90-year-old Norval Marquez back out there for Germany one last ride.
but like Demetrius Moore was on the roster, and I was just like he was like a kind of like a significant arm, not arm, but a significant hitter for them, and I was just like, I feel like you probably could have like that's like one of those there's like a few guys like that where they could have like probably given a player in their domestic league that spot.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't
It's
even know how he has a claim to German heritage. Maybe did he immigrate?
it's
I don't know idea.
but it's but I mean it was a pretty decent roster. Like Vincent Arends is in, I think he's in the Dutch league right now,
Yeah.
pretty solid as a catcher. They had I know Sean Larry has been a pretty good player in the Bundesliga for a while. Nicholas Rimmel, Sven
Yeah,
Schuler,
ex-Dodgers farmhand.
yeah, Duke Van Schamen, and Nick Whitgren was on that roster. I mean, it wasn't a bad roster. So I mean, it wasn't like I wouldn't say it was like as talented as say like Spain's roster was, but I wasn't seeing them like getting completely shut down by Czechia. And I'm trying to remember, it was Great Britain that beat them up, I
Yeah,
think,
it
in the
was.
previous.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like, wow, this is a little disappointing. And then the schedule for the tournament was something that caught my eye. I was like, why are most of the games like in like weekdays? Like, why are they not playing more on the weekends? Like, because it's a very niche sport in Germany,
Hmm.
and I think you would want to have more games featuring Germany, which is why it's like the kind of the format was a little odd to me because I've never really got that format from like a qualifier perspective because a lot of times they're in countries where you're trying to grow the sport more and you want them to have the national team play more.
Right,
Like
right.
the idea that you could just go 2 games and out and then all of a sudden like the interest is just totally sapped because it's like, well, you know, my team is out already. So I mean Germany won I think 1 and 2,
Yeah, they
right? So
did.
they
Yeah.
were so it was just as soon as they were out, it was just like, okay, we know there's not going to be a lot of Spain fans who travel to this. There's not going to be a huge amount of Great Britain fans, and I think the biggest contingent outside of Germany was probably Czechia
Yeah,
fans.
Czechia. It's pretty close to
And
Germany
so it was
geographically.
like yeah, this isn't going well. So I would have done personally, like, I think what they should have done is just if you're gonna have the 6 teams, just do 2 pools of 3 and do a little round robin and then have like a semifinal after that. So it's more like, you might have the same amount of games, but you can kind of make sure you ensure certain matchups happen. Like you could ensure like a Germany plays Spain in the first round or plays a Great Britain where you can kind of sell that matchup to fans.
So yeah,
Not like
some kind of historical rivalry. I have no idea what that could be based on in real life history.
yeah, it's something that fans can get intrigued with. And I felt like that was a major problem in Panama too.
Yeah, yes.
Like
Speaking of two and done, how about we talk about Pool B? So that was Panama, Nicaragua, Brazil, Argentina, Pakistan, and New Zealand. And I barely remember this pool because the only team I cared about, the only teams I cared about, two of them were like instantly eliminated, and then Brazil choked. And Panama literally just like showed up for 2 days, won both games, and left.
yeah, for me it was like I mentioned with the format before, if you can just win 2 and it's over for you, like that's not going to help attendance. That's not going to help fans be engaged. But and especially because Panama didn't play a marquee team really. They had what it
It was
was
Brazil, I think,
Brazil on the
and
second Brazil that they beat to advance, but the first game was against Argentina, and that was like Argentina not known for their baseball, and that's something that they're trying to grow. But it was like they just didn't have kind of those matchups. Like a Nicaragua would have generated more interest just because of the region and the interest that come from that. And then so it was just they were done, and then everyone was just kind of like, okay, that's it, basically.
yeah,
And I watched I watched I think every single pitch from that qualifier. So I remember it very very vividly. Uh, I thought Pakistan showed kind of decently in moments as against Argentina and against Nicaragua. I thought they were, you know, obviously you could see like in talent they had a little ways to go, but I thought they were a lot more competitive,
oh yeah,
especially compared to with their performance in Brooklyn. Like you could see that in Brooklyn they were really, really overmatched. But I thought they played better. They had some moments of pretty solid pitching. Just offensively, they had a lot to be desired.
hmm
But I think the team who really impressed me in that pool was Argentina because I didn't see them being as competitive as they were. They've had some guys with some minor league experience, but the the Argentinian league is not one of the top leagues in the Americas. So it was definitely interesting to see how far they were. And then when they took the lead, I can't remember who hit the home run, but I know he played at Boston College. But they took the lead in like the 7th inning, and I was like, "Oh my God, are they going to beat Nicaragua?" Because that would have been just a massive upset. And and so I thought they were pretty impressive. And like Panama, you just knew they were a level above everyone in that pool. Like they have so many players with minor league experience and players who were playing in who had played in Japan or Korea. So it was to be expected that they would come out of that pool. And it was really the first pool in a while that Panama had where, because they had lost to Brazil in 2012 and lost to Colombia in 2016. It was the first qualifier they had hosted where the talent gap was as big as it was for them compared to everyone else.
Yeah. And I remember just raging at Brazil for choking that last game against Nicaragua. I think they were just completely gassed at that point.
I think one of the things for Brazil was Brazil, like all of their, for the most part, their top players were all pitchers, and they like position players is kind of an area of weakness, and that really showed in those final two games. Like, you had the I can't let me pull up the rosters because I can't remember their name right now, but the brothers that were on that team. Where is it? Oh, the Lopes brothers. Tim and Christian Lopes, they were basically like they were their, and Leonardo Reginald. Those are their best hitters. And so if one or two of them is off, they didn't have the kind of the lineup that was going to be able to score enough. But the Nicaragua Brazil game was about as evenly matched as it could get. So I was like, this could go either way. But Nicaragua squeezed out just enough.
Yeah, I think I distinctly remember like there was some bad defense played in the Brazilian outfield that costs like a run or two. Like it was just some like really routine play that they mucked up or something.
It was it wasn't a shock to me that Brazil lost, but I also it would have been big for Brazil to make the tournament just for the growth of their national team. Just because 2013 when they made it, the WBC was a lot smaller. Like it was not as popular as it is now because there was still a lot of people in the U.S. who kind of just saw it as kind of almost like a sideshow act. And as it's grown, it's becoming, more popular and seen as more of a marquee event. So getting Brazil there would have been nice, but I didn't mind Nicaragua being there because that's a country who's definitely on the rise. So I mean, so that qualifier was interesting. The only team who didn't really, the only teams who didn't really like pose a real threat was probably New Zealand and Pakistan.
Yeah, New Zealand. I mean, they weren't terrible, but they haven't really done much.
It was the pitching for New Zealand that they just didn't have enough.
Yeah.
So I think it was one of the players who was born in New Zealand but represented Australia. I'm trying. I think you know the pitcher I'm talking
about. Kyle Glogowski.
Yes. Not having him there was a kind of a big blow. He had suffered some injuries, but he would definitely have been their best pitcher.
I remember watching it because he pitched against China for Australia, and I was like, I was gassing this guy up years ago. Like his fastball's sitting 85. Like I think he had like a 70 stuff plus or something like that for the tournament, which I was like, that's bad.
Yeah. I think he before his injuries, I think he was like throwing 93, 94. So he had I think he had a Tommy John surgery at one point, and he had some sort of elbow strain at some point. But his stuff had definitely taken a dive, and yeah, because it was at one point he was a lot more highly rated within I think it was the Phillies system. Yeah. So it was It was definitely for New Zealand not having him was a blow, but I mean it wouldn't have changed the outcome as far as like they wouldn't have made it like a deep run, but it still would have they would have been, I think, be able to put up a little better fight against Brazil in their opening game.
Yeah. All right. with that done and talked about, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the 2026 World Baseball Classic qualifiers. So the details we've gotten are that there's going to be two qualifier pools. The first one will be held from February 19th to the 26th, 2025, at the Taipei Dome in Taipei, Taiwan, and it'll consist of four teams: Chinese Taipei, Nicaragua, Spain, South Africa. And then qualifier two, the second one will be from February 28th to March 7th, 2025, at the Kino Sports Complex in Tucson, Arizona, and will consist of Brazil, China, Colombia, Germany. Besides the teams, the number of teams getting shrunk, they've changed the format to be a round robin. So whoever's ranked number one after the round robin is done just automatically goes to the WBC, and then the second and third rank teams will play one final game. So I think that means they play 7 games in total, at least.
Yeah, should be 7. Yeah.
Yeah. Something interesting to note is that of these two qualifiers, only one team has never been to the WBC, and that is Germany, which is, yeah, we talked about that earlier. Pretty bad.
I think that should be 10 games, right?
Because
Each team plays 3.
yeah,
Each team plays 3, so it should be 10.
something like that.
Okay, I just want to make sure, like, people listening don't don't think I have like a 4th grade education. So I'm just making that, just trying to make that clear. But yeah, it's a different format than they've done in previous qualifiers, which is a much better format. But I think I would have liked, uh, probably like a semifinals, just because I like a playoff round. But I get that the top team will move on.
Yeah.
The second and third teams playing. I mean, that's that is good. I never like, in general, teams advancing out of pool play because it's so matchup based.
Yeah.
With tiebreakers playing such a huge role, it's like you advancing to the WBC because your like run quotient was like 0.1 better. Like, to me that's ridiculous. And I don't even know how they determine the run quotient. Like, how did that come about? Like, why is that better than run differential?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you.
That's bizarre to me. But it's I would say, for which qualifier do you think is more interesting?
Like, more interesting as in the games will be more fun to watch, or more interesting to me based on like what teams I care about?
Whichever one you
I think the more fun pool will probably be the first one. I think the games are going to be a lot closer than people are probably initially thinking, and the atmosphere will be awesome because Taiwan's going to be playing in Taipei. That being said, qualifier two has probably more teams I care about in Brazil and Germany. What do you think? What's your take on it?
it's definitely interesting. I would say qualifier 1 in Taiwan is going to be super interesting, but it's mostly because, like, the teams are so different. When you look at it, like, Spain is going to be a team that's going to rely on
Right.
offense. Like, that's going to be what carries them. And you look at Nicaragua, they're going to be the best pitching team, maybe in the entire qualifiers. They're just loaded top to bottom with pitching talent. So, I mean, and especially the fact that it looks like we could see MLB players there, they'll have a deep pitching group. Offensively is where it's gonna leave a lot to be desired for Nicaragua.
Yeah.
So it's whether or not they can muster enough offense, but teams are gonna be really hard pressed to score on it. Taiwan is kind of interesting because offensively they had moments where they were very good. Like Yu Chang, like his home runs in the WBC, like, were some of the best moments of the entire
Yeah,
tournament.
who could forget him
And
teeing off against Derek West in a high leverage situation? I will never, ever, ever
and
forgive. I will never forgive
and then
Hensley Mullins for his crimes.
and Stephen Woods, he homered off Stephen Woods in the Italy game,
Ugh.
and that was a big moment. Yeah, he had a lot of great moments.
Yeah.
And Taiwan, they're getting, I think, you can see their pitching development is getting a lot better.
Mhm.
They're putting guys in the minors more consistently. Like they could have anywhere from probably at least 5 or 6 guys that are in the minor leagues pitching for them in the qualifier. So their pitching was a really really rough spot in the WBC. So that's something that I can see is going to get a little better, but I just don't know how much and like how much damage they can do against someone like Nicaragua in pool play.
Yeah.
Because if Carlos Rodriguez or Fernando Perez are starting, or even one of the pitchers who had a really good year, Melvin Hernandez, who I'm a huge fan of, he could start potentially against them. I'm like, I don't know if they are going to be able to put up a 3 or 4 spot against them in Nicaragua's bullpen. So that's why it's so intriguing to me. And then South Africa. Well, South Africa has, potentially Dylan Unsworth, Taylor Scott, like proven pitchers who can give them a chance in the game, and Kieran Lovegrove, someone who can give them innings in a game. So I mean, they're going to be able to hang in a game, especially against someone like maybe Nicaragua, who's lesser offense.
Mhm.
That they can kind of stay in the game, and you never know. So I think it's just the talent is not as it's not as big as maybe you'll see in like in the other pool, like Colombia and China playing. Like that's going to be a big mismatch.
Yeah.
So it's closer in talent, and so you could go in and be like, oh, Taiwan and Nicaragua are going to win, and then right off the bat, like South Africa beats Nicaragua in the first game because Taylor Scott gives you 3 or 4 innings, and Dylan Unsworth gives you 3 or 4 innings, and it's like a 2-1 win, and so you never. And then after that, it's chaos.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just the matchups are going to be more even. So that's why I think that pool is intriguing. But pool B for me is you're going to get the most high end
For
talents
sure.
of of the pool. I mean, you look at Colombia. Like I actually was putting together kind of like a qualifier roster, what it could look like. I mean, it's a team that could have Harold Ramirez, Jordan Diaz, Michael Arroyo, who is one of the best prospects in baseball. Which I said to you privately, like I think he's potentially their best hitting prospect in their nation's history. Like so, I think like he's someone who's gonna have kind of that, or he's gonna burst onto the scene for the casual fan
Mhm.
who may not realize like this guy is really that good. And they have other prospects. You could see like someone like Ronaldo Hernandez, who's a catcher in the minors. He could be a major leaguer at some point in 2025. Nolan Beltran with the Phillies is kind of like a backup infielder. Diane Frias. Like Colombia's got a lot of position players who are can make that offense just really tough to handle. Jorge Alfaro, I
Yeah.
think he should be on this team.
Mhm.
But for me, Colombia, the pitching is going to be unreal because like Juan Bello, Didier Fuentes, Julio Tehran should be able to make this team. He's not really the same. He's not. I wouldn't put him as kind of what he was maybe back in like 2017 or so, but he's still a guy that can contribute. And they just like their other pitchers in the minors just load. Jose Quintana can also be on this
Yeah.
roster. So I think when you look at this group, it's going to take a monumental effort from Brazil or Germany to be able to knock them off in a game, just because
Yeah.
they just don't really have many holes.
Mhm.
Because I mean, you could also see Gio Urshela
Yeah.
playing third base. Like
Donnie
it's
Barrels.
just Donovan
Solano.
Solano at
Yeah.
second, or he won't be at second. Michael Royal would be, but maybe as a DH role. It's definitely Jeter Downs. I think can make this
Yeah.
team. He made
Yeah.
some big
He's playing in
strides.
MPB,
Yeah,
I think, right?
yeah. He just got his first hit, I think, and then it's just a roster where you're just like, okay, so the bullpen's going to be elite, the starting rotation is going to be elite, the offense is going to be elite. Okay, how are we going to beat these dudes? And so I think it's like they're going to be number one, and I think they're going to win the pool. But it's not as quite a big of a talent gap as like Panama had last time,
Mhm.
where you could see like Brazil and Germany be a little close. And I think the Germany Brazil game is going to be like they're going to play twice. I think there's no
Yeah,
question.
for sure.
And it's going to be so in many cases, whoever wins that first game, it don't really matter because they're just going to rematch again in the final. And I think for Brazil, I think it's going to be absolutely paramount that they get like Bo Bichette and Jan Gomes on this roster
Yeah.
because Germany is going to be a little stronger with kind of their lineup as a whole, a little more depth, not a huge difference, but I think Germany will be a little stronger. So I mean, they're going to need Bo Bichette and Jan Gomes to come in, probably hit a home run or two,
Yeah.
and they're gonna it. But I just look at the pitching, like the pitching is going to be really interesting because Brazil has a ton of arms. Germany is going to rely more on guys like Marcus Solbach and like young guys like Paul Hoff, who they're going to have to really grow up and step into a big role because Germany doesn't have quite the same options
Yeah,
on the mound that Brazil does.
that's like so. We've talked privately, and I listened to your predictions yesterday, and I think we're mostly in line with all of our predictions. I think the only incorrect prediction um, anyone can have about this, besides South Africa and China making it, is Colombia not finishing first in their pool. I think any other prediction's like pretty realistic. Um, I just think that with Germany, I think the affiliated talent all being like Dominican Summer League and Arizona like Complex League is gonna maybe be a problem because like I love Alessandro De La Cruz. He had a really great performance in the summer league for the Rockies, but like if he has to face Eric Pardinho or like one of who's the guy the Cubs signed from the
Oh, Daniel
yeah, if
Masaki.
he has to face Eric Pardinho or Daniel Masaki, do I like his odds there to like get on base? Not really. um
Yeah, I think Max Kepler and Brendan Donovan would be massive gets for them, and they really need them to play.
yeah, they need them, and Aaron Altair would be a good like another good veteran presence, and then kind of building around it with guys like Alessandro De La Cruz and Lou Helmig and Yannick
I think
Walter.
I think some guys that I would expect to be there is like Aaron Altair for sure. I think Aaron Altair probably would be their third best hitter. Like he would definitely be someone that they're going to rely on. So I think he's kind of that third hitter for them that I think would be kind of the difference between Germany and Brazil because Brazil doesn't really have that extra guy like Vinicius dos Santos. It was in the Dominican
Yes.
Summer League, but he's not really like you mentioned with Alessandro De La Cruz. He's younger than him even.
Mhm.
He's not quite ready to be kind of someone that you can rely on yet and to like step up into an environment like this and have a big tournament. But I mean, you never know.
Yeah.
But
I,
I think Germany has more established kind of pros. I think, and then like someone like Vincent Arends as a catcher is someone I think who can kind of be a solid fourth option. I don't expect like the Bruce Maxwells to be invited back because I think they've kind of moved past the need to do that.
mhm. Yeah, Vinicius dos Santos, unlike Alessandro, he didn't do very well in the DSL. And I've talked to Roger Munter a little bit about him, who's like the Giants prospecting guy. And he basically said, like, yeah, the organization had some concerns with his conditioning, so they didn't give him that much playing time. They just told him to go to the gym, basically.
Yeah, well, for me, I was very interested when I was watching. When I watched I'm probably the only person in America who was watching the South American under 18 championship. But he in that game in that tournament, like Vinicius dos Santos, he really struggled. Like you could tell he wasn't the best Brazilian prospect on that team. But he got signed by the Giants afterwards. That really surprised me because I was like, I figured that would be like in that environment, the scouts would be looking, at a lot of Brazilian players, and he really didn't. He really didn't stand out. I thought he really struggled with just making contact. So I this first season in the DSL, I didn't think was going to go well for him because he had a ways to go in his development. But he has kind of the natural athleticism where if he can kind of improve certain aspects of his bat to ball skills, like he's somebody who could see advancement in the minors.
Yeah,
But
trust me, Giants fans have been we've been having a lot of heated discourse about the disconnect between what our front office evaluates players as and what the scouts tell the front office to evaluate the players as.
I'm always curious. Like that's something like I feel like I'm not a scout, but I feel like I have decent like perception on who can be an effective player and who can't. And I was so when I saw him, I was just like I figured maybe another year he might get an offer, but I was just like now that's kind of surprising. Like I think when I watched that tournament, like Dylan Dubovic, who's going to be probably a first round pick in
Right, right.
2025. I watched that guy and I was like, okay, this dude looks like an absolute beast. And so I was expecting a little more hype related to him coming out of that tournament. It took a little while, but you could just see like the gap between him and everyone else on his team was pretty massive. So he's probably like the next guy that represents Brazil. That's like a star coming up. But it's I just look at this roster with Brazil and I'm like, they're going to be able to pitch. You mentioned Eric Pardinho. Gabriel Barbosa has moments at times when he's solid. Daniel Masaki, Bo Takahashi,
I,
like they have guys who are going to be able to pitch, but it's just can they muster enough offense? Like, there's gonna be a lot of pressure on like Boba Fett, for example.
yeah.
Like he had a rough year and he had an injury, and so he's getting like finger surgery. So it's going to be interesting to see how he plays, but they're going to need him to just absolutely crush it
Yeah.
because they just don't have those same options. If he struggles, like if he goes, in the 3 games like 2 of 12, all of a sudden Brazil's probably looking at some games where they may not even score. So it's gonna be imperative that him and Jan Gomes and Gabriel Gomes, who's been in the Dominican Summer League, it's gonna be asking a lot of him to kind of step up into a role, and really make a difference there. But when you look at it, they're gonna need someone to really step up. I mean, Leonardo Reginato is gonna be a key piece. I think out of their main league, you're gonna see probably Osvaldo Carvalho is going to have to be somebody that they rely on. So it's going to be interesting to see how Brazil does. I made the prediction that Brazil was going to make it, but I'm kind of waffling on that now.
Yeah, that I was about to ask you, like you predicted Brazil was going to make it, and I predicted Brazil was going to make it because I have no faith in Germany's ability to not choke. I'm sure they'll find some way to disappoint me again, but
I just
it sounds like you might be changing your mind.
I it's I made the prediction on the podcast originally, but I'm still sticking with it, but I'm not. It's not like total confidence in the pick just because I just look at like for me, Germany has made so many strides in their domestic league. Like there are players that are playing in Germany right now that can come into this qualifier and have a pretty solid showing. So I think it's going to be one of those like when they play in the final, it's going to be because I mean if China beats one of them, I
It's
mean I
over.
would be in absolute shock. All right, so I just think one of them, both of them are going to make it there. So question is basically who does Germany have that's going to be able to give them length and innings in the matchup? Because Marcus Solbach isn't quite the pitcher he was pre-injuries.
Yeah, he's no longer the big germ who absolutely obliterated the Australian Baseball League a couple years ago.
Yeah, he's not. He doesn't throw as hard now, and he got. I think when he played in the Prague Baseball Week, I think he got hit around a little bit by Japan's under-23 team. So I think it's it's going to be for Germany. They're going to be asking Paul Hoff to play a big role, and it's like I'm not sure if he's going to be quite ready for that. Imagine like Duke von Schaman and Nicholas Rimmel. Those are going to be two guys who are going to play, pretty significant
Yeah,
roles.
I think Rimmel is probably the biggest like hinge piece there. I think like because he's so clearly like head and shoulders like a better than most of the pitchers in the baseball Bundesliga. Like he came to the Bundesliga, he threw a perfect game in his first season. And it's like, okay, guys, like why is he here? Like no major league organization wanted to sign him and give him another shot. Like I think it kind of rests on like how much length he's able to give you and like I guess how ready he is to dog it out for the team.
Oh yeah, I think for sure on that one, he's one of the players that you're just like, why did he not get signed?
Exactly.
Like he wasn't even like
He
bad.
was never bad.
It's
That's what
like
I said. He was never bad for the Twins and they just cut him.
they're just like, yeah. I mean, like you're getting older. I think he was in AAA, wasn't he, or was it Double A?
I think he was only
He might be
high
Double
A.
High A. What was it, High A? Okay, yeah. It was like, okay, so what exactly was the problem?
Yeah, it's like,
It's
well,
like,
he's
yeah, I
old for the
mean,
level. Okay, he's never not showed you that he deserves to have a shot at a higher level, so why didn't you promote him?
right,
And it's like,
right.
oh,
It's
well,
just
he's
like,
only a reliever. It's like, did you ever try him as a starter? No? Okay.
they're just like, all right, we don't really have a good excuse here, so we're just gonna just let him go.
Yeah.
And I found like that's like a significant problem in the that's going on in the minors right now. Is just a lot of guys are getting released, and it's like it's not really like proper justification. Like they just won't promote them, and then they release them. I think the Mariners did that with a an Australian pitcher, Townsend.
Hmm.
I think he was in high A and he was having a really good season, and then they released him. It's just like I don't know. Why don't you just like call me crazy, promote,
Yeah.
and then bring him to another level? But I would and I'm just kind of looking at the German roster. Like I think probably out of the Bundesliga, the only hitters I see them even like probably adding. I'm guessing it's like Sean Larry and Lou Helmig.
John Larry, a great non-European named European up
Right.
there with Dylan Farley and like guys like that.
I like I like Germany in these qualifiers. I'm like, do I like him enough to beat Brazil with the high end pitching Brazil has? That's going to be a question. But it's I think that matchup is going to be for me one of the most intriguing qualifying matchups that we've had because those teams are just so evenly matched. And then poor China.
Yeah, poor China. Um,
China's going to probably have to. I mean, they're going to have probably Alan Carter.
again, yeah. I mean, he's having a good
He'll be
year
on.
at in the American Association, I think.
Yeah, he's having a good year. He would definitely be one of their top relievers. And then they have Zach Chin, who's in or Keen, however you pronounce that his last name. He's gonna be. I would guess he'll be on this team.
Hmm.
He had a pretty made it to single A now, and he had some decent moments in the complex league. So I imagine he'll be on this
Oh
roster. And
yeah,
then the Red Sox have a player. I think he's in single A or high A. Who has his mom is Chinese.
Mm.
That I think could be on this
Is it Stein
roster.
van der Schaaf? Because I think his mom is Chinese. I could be
Are you
wrong.
serious?
I think his mom is Taiwanese, maybe? I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't talking about him. Let me see. Let me pull up the roster here. I think he's either on Salem or Greenville. Maybe he's a pitcher. It is.
Yeah, I can't.
I think he's got like he's somebody that like you would be like, okay, this dude's like sounds like he's from like Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Like, I'm sorry, hunk
it's
ball fans, don't come for my head for not knowing ball and specifically knowing where Stein van der Schaaf's mom is from. That would be really funny if
it's
Taiwan or China was like, "Hey,
oh
Dutch kid, come play for us."
okay, yeah, it's Jeremy Wu Yellen.
Okay,
That's who it is. Yeah, he's his mom is, I believe, born and raised from China, and then she moved to Hawaii, I believe, later on. And so he had like he pitched in high A. I think he has like high ERA, but he averaged like over 11 Ks per nine.
right, right.
So he's actually actually they didn't move to Hawaii. It was Washington. So he's from Seattle. Um, he's yeah he went to Hawaii for college. But yeah he had kind of a he's had high ERA post. He was a pretty interesting prospect until he had to get Tommy John, and so I think he's still kind of like in the process of coming back from that. And so, but I mean, I would if I'm China, I'd reach out for someone like that to get him into the fold because they are going to need some kind of high level arms if they want to pull off an upset. Because offensively, I think I believe Connor Joe could be on this team, and also I wonder if Brian Wu would be available. I think his grandparents were Chinese, not Taiwanese. So I mean, someone like him on this roster would be massive.
Yeah,
So I
another
mean,
another thing about like something you always have to kind of think about with the Chinese team is like, yeah, these people may be technically eligible, but like, are they going to want to represent China? Because like, there's, like it or not, there's a little bit of like, you know, baggage. I don't want to say baggage, but like negative perception in some places towards, China and Chinese sports, deserve it or not. Um,
yeah, that's definitely a factor. I do think Connor Joe has spoken about uh, kind of being proud of being Chinese. So I feel like he would be open
yeah.
to representing Taiwan, not Taiwan, but China, I should say. And then I can't remember Keston Hira. He's a
Oh,
Japanese Chinese
that's a
player. He's
name I
eligible.
haven't heard in a long time.
So I'm like, if they were to get all these guys to play, China would actually be kind of competitive. So it's interesting what happens. I mean, are all these guys going to play? Probably
Yeah.
not. But they have some options there to kind of make their roster a little more competitive. I think it'd just be a tall task to expect them to win a game in this group, but it wouldn't shock me if it's the eighth inning and it's like a 4-3 game with Germany or something. So
Yeah, and I know, they did pretty well at the U23 Baseball World Cup, and we've kind of talked about like why maybe you shouldn't put a whole lot of stock into that, but I found like two top performers from that tournament were I think Chiri Wu, who is a shortstop, who was the best hitter on the team, and then Wei Zhao, who is a starting pitcher and the best pitcher on the team.
I mean, they've shown pretty decently in kind of competitions like the Asian Games last year. I think it was the first time they beat Japan, and they it's they I think they definitely have some like quite a few intriguing arms for sure. It's just offensively is like kind of the area that is going to be a clear weakness. And so, I mean, I don't expect in this environment to like see like Germany and Brazil beat them like 10-1 or something. But it's going to definitely be a tall task. So, I mean, I think they're the clear fourth team in this group.
Yeah, like instead of 10-1, it'll be like 8-5, maybe.
I mean, I don't know if five is, that seems a little ambitious, but I do think you could see like a 6-3 win, and honestly, it depends on how these teams really order their rotation. That's going to be really interesting because if I believe Germany and Brazil are going to play in the first game,
Hmm.
so like they're going to probably have to put like you probably aren't going to be able to have two starters the same starter start twice. So it's going to be interesting on how they order their rotation because do you save your best pitcher for the final,
Yeah.
even if he may not pitch if you don't make it, or do you pitch him to start game one because you're like, we need this win, or do you start him against like Colombia in hopes that you can knock off Colombia and you don't have to even play the final?
Yeah, if you're Germany, do you
So
go like, all right, Paul Hoff, Cesar Aquino, no pressure, but we're all counting on you. And then you start
it's
Rimmel
like,
against
please don't rest.
Colombia and you save Solback for the final, and then maybe like tell Sven Schuler something to start the game against China or whatever.
It's definitely a balancing act because I feel like the 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 teams in this format who have the most pitching depth have just a massive advantage because
Yeah,
like they can kind of lay out their pitching the way they want and not feel like they're sacrificing too much.
exactly.
If
I think that, pitching wins championships, in MLB and the WBC to a lesser extent, but like in a format like this where there's less kind of like simultaneously less and more games of importance than before, it's definitely kind of even more of a issue now that you have good pitching.
and it that's probably the part that like would scare me about Germany is like do we have enough depth in there to like win, you know, two or three games?
Yeah,
It's gonna be hard.
it's like we're getting past Paul Hoff and Cesar Aquino, and it's like, all right, who else we got up there? Mike Bolsenbrook, 40-year-old, 45-year-old Mike Bolsenbrook. Time to get ready to relieve him, buddy.
Right. I'm definitely intrigued though by Germany. I wonder if Tim Fisher will be on this roster.
I
I think he had an
I
injury.
think he will be.
Not
I mean, I would be surprised if Germany just doesn't try to field like every single affiliated player they have, even though Fischer's kind of not been amazing.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a struggle, but he was put on the 60-day disabled list in July, so he might have gotten arm surgery.
Yeah,
So he may not even be available.
yeah. I know. Using unavailability of pitchers as a segue, why don't we look at some of the teams in Pool A and specifically Nicaragua because they will not have Jonathan Loaizaga. I'm pretty sure he's out with
Yeah,
UCL surgery.
yeah, he'll not be available, and that's that's gonna be a big blow. I mean, yeah, I feel bad for him because he just basically had a couple mistake pitches against Israel, and that's why they're here now, basically.
Yeah,
Um, but he would have been a big addition, and so that's going to be a tough blow for Nicaragua. But they have so much pitching depth that it really may not matter. I think I think Nicaragua is really they're an interesting story because if this was 5 years ago, I mean, there's a pretty good chance they wouldn't qualify. But now they're just putting pitchers in the minors every season, and and it's usually multiple guys a year. But the key for them is they got to find a way to develop some hitters. It's supposed to be a top 50 prospect, I think, that's signing in 2025.
Yeah, it's
So I guess we'll see.
Kenley Hunter. He's the number 36 international prospect.
One thing I noticed about Nicaragua is a lot of their players that have signed recently, like their uncles or dads or brothers played minor league baseball.
Hmm.
Like it's a very very like family affair with Nicaraguan baseball players. So I'm always like, that name sounds familiar. Let me go look it up. Like, oh yeah, his dad played minor league baseball like 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that Nicaragua is gonna pitch their asses off, but like, I don't have that many like position players who are gonna do anything. Like, are we like Freddie Zamora is probably gonna be your starting shortstop. He hasn't had an OPS above 750 since 2021. Like Miklar Perez is a third baseman for the Mariners at A ball. He had a decent year, but it's like, we're sending Juan Montes and his mustache back out there in the outfield. Like, let's hope for the best, I
I think
guess.
I think for them, they gotta find a way to talk Mark Vientos into playing, because I think if you have Mark Vientos at third base on this team, that that could literally be the difference.
Mhm.
Because a 25 homer guy in the big leagues on this roster, it would basically be like putting Barry Bonds on the roster. It's just kind of like, okay, this is the one guy we cannot let beat us. Like, do not give this guy a pitch within 3 feet of the strike zone.
Right,
And of
exactly.
course, someone's going to groove a 90-mile-per-hour fastball center cut. And it's like, okay, well, don't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but I think, like, without Mark Vientos, you're probably looking at like starting third baseman is probably going to be, I think, Elian Rayo instead of Milcar Perez. I think Milcar Perez probably starts at first, and it's Juan Montes in center field. I think you could see some of the guys from the under 23 team potentially in the lineup. I think it's they don't have a lot of guys that necessarily that are gonna strike a lot of fear in pitchers' hearts. So it's gonna be a lot of, kind of they're gonna have to execute every little thing extremely well, and they're gonna need their pitchers to be at the top of their game.
Which they probably will be.
I mean, I think it's kind of insane that you could just go Carlos Rodriguez and Fernando Perez like right off the bat, and then you still have Erasmo Ramirez who can still has a little bit left in the
Yeah,
tank. He can give you
35,
something out of the
35,
bullpen,
36-year-old Erasmo Ramirez.
and it's so you're still gonna have guys who can kind of carry the pitching load, and so I mean they'll be there, but not having Jonathan Loaiza definitely will hurt a bit. But it's gonna be which one of their young pitchers can kind of step up and kind of fill a role who aren't Fernando Perez or Carlos Rodriguez. I think Rodney Theophile, how you pronounce his name, he had a big year, and he's really like I think started a high A, and he's already kind of has gotten close to making his major league debut. So I mean that's something that could happen next year. So he'll be play a big role for them. So I mean they have a lot of arms to go to. It's just, can you score enough?
Yeah. And speaking of young pitchers stepping up, why don't we talk a little bit about Taiwan, Chinese Taipei? Because you could see like they've got a lot of like high level minor league pitching that could make an impact here. Like I think technically they had a major leaguer this year in Kai Wei Tang from my Giants. Let's go, Thick King Kai Wei Tang with his 9.8
Yeah,
ERA.
yeah. I mean, I saw that happening, unfortunately, because he would kind of get hit a little bit as a um, as a minor leaguer. He always had a fairly high strikeout rate. Like he can miss
Yeah,
bats, but when
he's kind of got like the Yu Darvish syndrome of, oh yeah, I'm going to strike out 12 guys in 6 innings, but I'm going to give up like 5 runs, and all of them are home
right,
runs. But like
it's like
he's not as good as Yu Darvish for a variety of reasons, obviously.
yeah, it's basically he can get you strikeouts, but when he misses in the zone, that ball's going like 400 some
Yeah,
feet. So it's that's definitely an issue. And then I know he's always had an issue with walks.
yeah,
So
that's
he's
never
kind of
gone
like
away.
he's kind of like someone that I know in WBC he really struggled. I
He,
think it was against Panama. I want to say he really struggled. So I think he's probably I. They're going to be a little apprehensive about putting him in high leverage
right,
spots.
yeah.
So I think what's going to be interesting with Taiwan is I think they're like you look at their lineup. Their lineup's going to be better in the qualifiers than it was in the WBC because I know Shang and Lin, who was in the complex league with the Reds,
Hmm.
he had a pretty strong season, and he's a two-way player. But I didn't see him pitch,
Mm,
so I'm not sure how good of a pitcher he is. But he's definitely gonna be one of their one of their key bats, and they have another one that's in Double A right
How
now.
you Lee for Detroit, I think.
Yes, yes. I thought he had some good moments this year.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know he's their number like 8 prospect, so he's a pretty legit like middle infield prospect. I'm not sure how well he did this year. Um,
He had an 851 OPS in Double A.
okay, so yeah, that's pretty legit.
Yeah, he's I feel like he's probably third base is going to probably be his best position. I kind of feel like, but we'll see where he ends up playing. He's mostly played second,
Hmm.
but I think on this roster he probably would be third base.
Right. And
And but I mean these are like legit, a couple legit hitters that they've been lacking, and I mean they had a good showing offensively for the most part in the WBC. So the offense is going to be better. It's just their pitching. That's going to be the key. Is how do these young pitchers do?
yeah.
Because there's going to be a lot asked of them. Because I like their domestic league. I feel like the pitching is usually not very strong.
Yeah, I think they used a lot. I think they had a good amount of like CPVL pitching in the WBC, and look at how it went for them.
I think they're going to probably rely on their minor leaguers more often. I mean, some of them have been like they've had some up and down moments. There was I know the one that signed with the Athletics. I think he had
I know, yeah. Are you thinking of Chen Zhuang?
yeah.
Yeah, he had a pretty good year this year at Double A for them. Um, and Yumin Lin, he's kind of like Taiwanese Sam Aldegheri, but a little bit shorter and thinner. I think he's like Arizona's number 7 prospect, and he's actually going to the AFL along with Wenhui Pan, who's in the Phillies organization.
I know he's gonna Yu Min Lin is gonna be on Taiwan's Premier 12 roster.
Right. Okay.
So he's gonna be throwing a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It will be interesting to see. I think like their Premier 12 roster will probably be pretty similar to what they send to the qualifiers, I would hazard a guess.
Yeah, I would say the only the only I honestly can't even think of anyone that would really kind of be held back from competing uh, at the at the Premier 12 that won't be at the WBC qualifier because they don't have any in the majors right now,
Hmm.
and and they don't really have many high minor league pitching, So as far as like guys who MLB teams are trying to block from playing,
Right.
but I think if I had to guess, I would say Yumin Lin probably is going to be the race
Hmm.
at the qualifier.
Someone who could potentially be their ace at the qualifier is Yi Lei Sun, who is in MPB. I think he's on the Fighters Farm team, but he has an absolutely electric fastball. I'm pretty sure.
That's like
I think he threw like a
that's,
shutout at the U18 like World Cup last year. Could be wrong.
I'm interested to watch him because obviously, as someone who doesn't live in Asia, it's a bit hard for me to be up at times when the MPB games are going, or watching farm teams. So I haven't actually seen him pitch. So it's I'll be interested to see him pitch, but I think for sure Taiwan's pitching will be better than it was in the WBC.
Mhm.
Just will it be better by enough?
Yeah, that's the question because they're gonna have to face Spain, and Spain might be able to field a lineup with Pete Alonso, Noelvi Marte, Luis Guillorme, and Emil Morales, which would be pretty crazy. Um, whether or not that happens is kind of up in the air because Pete
Yeah, Pete
Alonso,
Alonso I would say is probably the least chance of that happening, but we'll see. And then they will we will get some former minor leaguers for Spain that are from Spain originally
mhm.
that are going to be on this roster.
um, Pete, I think Pete Alonso is going to be a free agent this offseason, so yeah,
That's even makes it even more unlikely.
yeah, unfortunately. I know he sometimes talks about his Spanish heritage, but he's never been like, "Oh, I'd love to represent Spain." Like,
No, I think it for sure. I would say he's representing the U.S. is kind of where he's at.
yeah.
But we should be able to get Peter Bonilla uh, representing. He's out from the cage that the Dodgers are holding him in.
Yeah, please let him do something. I think I read an article where the Dodgers were like, "Yeah, he could definitely be at the next level, but we're just focusing on getting his velocity up even higher, so that's why we aren't letting him leave the summer league." And I'm like, okay, great. So he'll be like the typical Dodgers 28-year-old pitching prospect who,
But
I'm supposed to believe is the next big thing or whatever.
so here's the issue with that. Is there a rule that the complex league like coaches aren't allowed to teach anything? Like I'm a little perturbed by the explanation. Like you can promote guys and still help them increase their velocity. Like I don't think the complex league they're like whoa he throws 91. There's nothing we can do here.
Yeah, or like it's the same argument that like Pirates fans are coping about David Matoma not getting promoted. It's like, oh, we have to teach him a breaking ball in the summer league or the complex league before we can send him. I was like, no, he can learn those things, you know, at high A or whatever. He doesn't have to be here for that.
Also, he throws 100 miles per hour. I'm pretty sure he can do just fine in single
Yeah,
A
yeah,
with
I don't think he's gonna
with a.
have a problem.
It's just like well, like there's literally big league pitchers who learn new pitches. Like it's definitely not a thing where it's like well we have to hold them down here. I think it's mostly just because the Pirates are kind of hoarding their prospects and don't want to release them.
Mhm.
Like they have a pretty loaded farm system. That's why kind of guys like Alessandro Urcolani are still in high A when he's just shoving
Yeah.
left and
Yeah,
right.
Ari Franson is at AAA, but Alessandro Urcolani's having to label A at high A and is also not going to the fall league.
Yeah, it's just like we just don't know if he's ready for the next level. He's ready.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Hey, if Ari Franson's ready for the next level, he's ready for the next level.
So he's definitely Peter Bonilla. I saw him like he pitched I know in like the friendly series before the European Championships against France, and he pitched a little bit. I think maybe one game in that tournament. He's he's going to be like one of their top pitchers in the bullpen.
Yeah, he's not. They haven't let him start at all, have they? I don't.
No, I don't think so. He's I think every single game has been out of the pen.
Interesting. They'll also have probably both of the Hernandez brothers in the lineup, Frank and Omar.
Yeah, the Hernandez brothers are playing right now in the Barcelona, I should say, Barcelona Baseball Cup.
Nice.
I do think we could see Spain have quite a few Cuban players on their roster.
Yeah.
I think one guy you could see Elian Leyva representing Spain in the qualifiers, even though he plans to represent Cuba in the main tournament.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but he's pitched for Spain before.
That's kind of like a somewhat tough thing about forecasting like Spain's rosters because like at least for me who doesn't I don't really speak Spanish that well. I don't read or write it that well anymore. I used to be better at it when I was younger, but it's like okay, they just like randomly are like, yeah, all these random ass Cuban and Venezuelan people are eligible for our team. And it's like, okay, there's no way for me to know this really, but they're on the team now.
I'm generally curious on how they go about the roster because it's kind of like when you look at the roster, there's so many players that are eligible, but like who really wants to represent them? And because I feel like I could look at the amount like half the Cubans that are in Major League Baseball, quite frankly, could probably represent Spain.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like more than likely, they don't have any interest in doing so.
Right.
But we could see the return of Mark Civic.
Yo, Mark Civic.
I think he had a really good year in Italy, but I think he kind of struggled a little bit during Honk Ball Week for Spain.
Yeah,
but I would imagine he's got to be on this roster.
Yeah, you'll probably see Wander Encarnacion again. I think he had a really good season in the Italian league. He's like one of those guys who you're like, I feel if Major League front offices more properly scouted the European leagues, someone probably would have given him a minor league deal by this point, but I don't know.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's I think Gabriel Lino should be on this roster. I mean, I feel like they're gonna hit. It's gonna be interesting what they do pitching wise.
Justin Connell had a good year at Sioux City for the American Association, so he could be back. I know that of the World Showcase 2024 roster, I think there were 3 Spaniards and 2 of them were pitchers. Andres Peña, who had a pretty good U18 World Cup in 2023, and then Diego Alcala. So those might be 2 guys you could see if they're.
Anderson Peña is also going to the showcase. I think he's a shortstop.
Yeah, he is.
I think he could be someone down the line who makes could make an appearance for them. Also, I think one pitcher who you could see is Odrasamar Despaigne on this team.
Was he Cuban?
Yeah, he's Cuban. Used to pitch in the big leagues with the White Sox, and I think a couple other teams, the Angels and the Marlins and the Padres. He's playing for them in the Barcelona Baseball Cup. I think a lot of the guys that are playing for them in Barcelona right now are players that they want to bring to the qualifier.
Is Justin Connell playing there? I haven't seen.
He is not.
Okay,
no.
Interesting. And I think
he's probably going to play winter baseball, I would guess.
Right. I think the like probably like the Harry Ford of this upcoming qualifiers is probably going to be Emil Morales. As long as the Dodgers let him play for
Yeah.
Spain.
Emil Morales is interesting because he's like I'm not sure how many people actually even have seen him play even a game.
Right, yeah.
So it's like he's gonna step into a qualifier first inning, hit a ball at 430 feet, and they're gonna be like, "Wow, so this guy's good."
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, he hit like what? He hit like 20 plus home runs in the DSL.
I think it was, I want to say 15. I think I looked up because I'm the only one who does this stuff. But I looked up the past Dominican Summer League. I think only one player in like the last like 15 years has hit more home runs than him
Oh my
in a
God.
season.
And he also walked a bunch and stole a bunch of bases, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's just like I'm like you. It's gonna be one of those things that like he's gonna just do phenomenally well, and then the Dominican Republic's gonna call
yeah,
him.
exactly.
Be like, so like we may have a spot available in 2026. Let us know.
Yeah, and then Spain, if they qualify, is gonna be like, well,
That's another thing with like Mark Vientos announcing he's gonna play for the Dominican Republic is like you also could have like a future like top prospect in baseball who like flies through the Dodger system and takes your spot.
exactly.
Like it's why it's so hard to forecast out 2 years because it is definitely someone like Emil Morales could end up representing the Dominican Republic, and then you're just like, yeah, this guy's a superstar.
Right. Yeah. So
So
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, are we just gonna do like final predictions and finish and standings here, or
Yeah, I think to just give South Africa their flowers a little bit, like maybe Taylor Scott represents them, and that'd be cool. Um, their pitching is not going to be terrible, but their hitting is probably going to be pretty bad.
agreed?
Yeah,
I think it's Christian Byers is gonna probably be their best hitter,
when Chris
and
Bayers and Ulrich Bajarski are like your best hitters, you might be cooked.
so I think yeah, I think we're definitely in agreement on their their place.
Yeah. So yeah, why don't we do final predictions for the qualifiers?
All right. I'm going in Pool A. I got um I got Nicaragua going 3-0 and finishing first in qualifying, and then I've been actually going back and forth on this one too. That's why predictions are bad. It gives me time to think about it, and I'm actually gonna change it, and I'm going Spain over Taiwan for the second spot. I think just the offense that Spain has is it's going to be hard for a lot of teams in this pool to compete with that offense, and I think it's just they don't have quite the high end pitching talent that Nicaragua has with Taiwan. So I think they can knock off Taiwan. I think they finish in second and grab the last spot out of that pool.
Mhm. For me, I think I think I'll probably go Taiwan and Nicaragua. I think I like the balance of Taiwan a little bit more than the raw offensive power of Spain. I mean, it's hard to forecast who's going to pitch for Spain, like you said, but them also playing at home in Taipei is probably going to help them out, with home field advantage and all that.
All right, and then let's go to the second pool, and I think for me, Colombia, just obvious pick to finish number one for me. I know it, you may like someone else over them for the number one spot, but I like Colombia. I just think the pitching and the hitting is just it's just too much for anyone else in this pool to really match up with, and I think they should finish first, and then the second spot. Yeah, I've really waffled on this one. because it's like I'm gonna like Germany's roster. I'm gonna like Brazil's roster. Brazil's got so much pitching. Germany has more depth to their lineup, but in a short tournament where pitching matters so much, and you can roll out Daniel Masaki, Eric Pardinho. You have a young player like Emmanuel Madeira who could step into a significant role. You got the Amasako brothers who could play big roles. I think Brazil just has so many arms they can go to, and Germany probably doesn't have enough offense to really overcome kind of the mismatch in pitching. I think it's going to be kind of one of those. I could see Germany winning one and then Brazil winning the final. And I think it's just Brazil will have just a little bit too much pitching and squeaks out something like a 3-2 win in the final.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Colombia will win uh, the second qualifier pool 3-0 or whatever. Like there's no way. I don't think there's any way they lose to Germany or Brazil. It would be one crazy upset. And as much as it pains me as a Germany fan to the death, um, I know I'm going to be disappointed by them inevitably, so I'm going to pick Brazil because they just have more high level pitching to get the job done.
All right, so my four are Nicaragua, Spain, Colombia, and Brazil, and you're going Nicaragua, Taiwan, Colombia,
Yeah.
Brazil. All right, I do wonder, like, you know how rabid the fan base in Taiwan's going to be, because I mean the last tournament I would like very rarely do you ever get like cameras that are like hyper focused on crowd chants and fans like you saw in that, because I feel like in baseball it's more like they kind of like romance the
Yeah, a
quietness
little bit,
and
yeah.
the laid back atmosphere in the U.S. in baseball games, whereas like in Taiwan it's like you got cheerleaders on top of the dugout, you got fans chanting, all jumping up around. It's like a college basketball atmosphere in the U.S. because we don't. It's really the only thing we have to compare, I would say. And so it'd be interested to know how loud it'll be inside the dome, because I don't care what any player says when you're inside of a dome and there's that much noise and it's that loud. There's players who are going to get a little
Yeah.
nervous
Yeah.
because I felt like in the Netherlands
Yeah,
game, like there's no doubt in my mind that some of the pitchers for the Netherlands were a little
they
spooked,
had Lars Heyer shaking in his boots.
right?
He was not up to the task.
You can always a pitcher on the mound steps off, big deep breath. I'm like, oh, it's not gonna go well.
Yeah.
Like and then like it was so funny though. Then the next day, Cuba just comes out, just shoves for 9 innings, and it's just like they're you could tell. I think that's kind of where you see the difference in the cultures of baseball, because I feel like a lot of Latin American players, I think that type of environment doesn't bother them
Hmm.
because they're used to, fans being absolutely
Right.
insane. So they're just like, yeah, whatever. But Netherlands generally has small crowds. It's not really like very boisterous. It's not a very crazy environment. So you go from that to going into an environment where it feels like they're screaming at you and they're just going for all 9 innings. There's no doubt it's like a shock. And then you're just like, okay, how do I do this?
Right, exactly. So it'll be fun to see, and I'm really looking forward to it. I don't think I'll be able to make it to either thing in person because of my job, but I think you were talking about you were going to try to get out to Tucson.
Oh, I'm going to be in Tucson for the qualifier. I wanted to go to Taiwan, but Unfortunately, it's a pretty pricey plane ticket, and it's also I kind of would have to pick one or the other.
Right.
And I'm gonna go to Tucson, and I'm hoping to do some interviews with some of the players there and talk to some of the coaches, and um, I should be able to be there as like an accredited member of the media, so that'll be cool. And so that's on that's in the cards for February, and hoping we get some roster announcements coming up here by like November, December. At least a like 50-man like preliminary roster.
Right.
But before you go, we let's I want to hear your predictions for the main tournament in 2026 because
Oh.
I did mine. I did mine already, and I believe I'm an honorary Canadian citizen at this point.
Yeah.
So
I remember that. I have not really thought about the 2026 WBC that much. Oh, geez. This is my completely off the cuff predictions. Let's see. Pool A. You're talking about Canada being really strong. Pool A, I'd probably go like Puerto Rico and Canada, I guess. Like this is all just, I don't know who the Pool A qualifier would be. Probably like Colombia. Um, Pool B, uh, let's see, USA, Mexico, Italy, Great Britain, maybe like Brazil or Germany. I'm gonna be boring and go US, Mexico. Um, Pool C, Japan, Australia, South Korea, Czechia. I don't know who else would be there. Taiwan, probably, if they qualify. I would guess probably Japan and Australia, just because, you have like Curtis Mead and Liam Hendricks and Travis Bazana, and Nikau Puaka Grego, maybe, for them. And then Pool D. Now, I could predict what is actually going to happen, or I could be funny, and I'm going to be funny and say the Dominican Republic and the Netherlands advance because Curacao and Aruba are still tied to them. So it would be Japan, Australia versus Dominican, Netherlands, and Puerto Rico, Canada versus USA, Mexico. I think Puerto Rico would be the one seed. I think Puerto Rico beats Mexico and the USA beats Canada. So Puerto Rico and USA on one side, and then Japan probably beats the Netherlands, and Dominican Republic beats Australia. So it'd be Puerto Rico, USA, Japan, Dominican. From that, I would assume those two play each other to go to the finals. I think the USA probably beats Puerto Rico, and uh, Japan, Dominica. That's going to come down to like rosters. I,
right, that's like there's not much more of a coin flip
yeah,
than that.
I
Like
would say Japan won last time. I don't know, maybe Framber Valdez is allowed to play in shells for like 6+ innings. I'll say the Dominican Republic beats Japan, so you get USA Dominican Republic, and
can you imagine that in
yeah, that'd
Miami?
be crazy. God, who would win that? It's gonna come down to like if the USA can actually convince any starting pitchers of note to play for them. Like,
I know Dylan Cease says he would like to pitch the next time, so he could be on that roster, which would be like no disrespect to Adam Wainwright, but massive
yeah.
upgrade.
No disrespect to Yomiuri Giants legend, now St. Louis Cardinal, Miles Michaelis.
Uh,
Yeah, but
yeah,
there's some better options. I think assuming,
Paul
yeah, Paul
Skeens.
Skeens, glory to Skeens, USA, let's go United States Air Force.
I've touched on this briefly, but Paul Skeens against like Shohei Ohtani in the final would be like. I feel like this would be like endless content from MLB's account on
Exactly,
X.
yeah.
They'd be like, we're just gonna show this replay like
10 million
we're just gonna
times.
just live feed of the game on X.
Can you believe this
just of these kids,
fastball Paul Skeens threw? Look at this fastball Paul Skeens threw to Shohei Ohtani.
right? Oh, his splinker,
Yes,
yes.
look at Shohei Ohtani's reaction. Game respects
Right.
game. Like just 10 million posts about it.
Right, and it's just like, and that's at the top of the first.
Yeah, and we're still going. I think like Paul Skeens, he represented the USA at Honkball Week Harlem, like when he was at the Air Force Academy. I'm pretty sure. Like there's videos of him like saluting the flag, like they're doing revelry and retreat.
I believe it was after he had announced his commitment to LSU, so it was kind of a.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I know
Yeah.
there's like pictures of him like literally saluting the flag because he's required to do that as like a uniformed service member. And so I'm like, yeah, he's probably going to play at the WBC. So I'm going to say the United States beats the Dominicans because they get there and just let Paul Skeens, run it out there versus the Dominican Republic. So yeah, USA wins, Dominican comes second.
All right. Yeah.
Japan probably has better metrics, so they come third than Puerto Rico.
That's like, I know nobody likes a bronze medal game exactly or a third place game, but I mean I really feel like you need a third place game because like getting third place based on like if you're not playing common opponents and you get third place because your numbers were better against an entirely different set of opponents.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make
it's
sense.
Like oh boy, like did Japan give up any runs versus the Czech Republic when Yamamoto was on the hill versus them versus like Puerto Rico had to play Panama and Cuba and like Mexico yeah, come on, what are we doing?
Yeah, so I mean I think it's just, and it would be kind of hilarious, I think, if to see a team just mail in the third place game. I think that's something it's always funny to me because the team who has the heartbreaking loss, they're just like, yeah, I don't really want to be here.
Yeah. Just like, man.
Like, wow, they lose 15-2. Didn't see this coming.
Yeah. All right. Well, I had a lot of fun talking WBCQ stuff with you. And I'm looking forward to your coverage of the Premier 12. I'm sure I'll probably follow it a bit.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get a couple players on to talk Premier 12 here in the next couple weeks. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. If you get any guys from the Netherlands, like if you manage to get Ari Franson on, give me a call.
I will. And I would say, Ari, your number one super fan, would like to say a few words.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, your number one Glazer.
Inspired him beyond belief.
Yeah, your number one Glazer needs to interview you.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Appreciate having you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always fun.
All right, we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah. Just you know where to find me. People, you can find me on Twitter.com, X, whatever you want to call it these days, at the Frilled Shark, all lowercase, all one word. And you can just, I think my YouTube account is linked in my profile, maybe. But more content to come. And yeah, thanks for having me on.
They say I sleep too much, undereat and such. Never really in the right state of mind. I wish that I would get